What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Oh my God, the door's open and everybody's piling in. It's just amazing.
Gosh, it looks like a TSA line. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't
What
think
do
it's that bad.
what do you call the
Are people
TSA?
outside right now?
Don't even get me started. What do you call the TSA in Canada? That's not a joke. I'm serious.
It
What do
sounds
you
like
call
a
them?
joke. We call it TSA, eh?
Very nice. Very nice.
Perfect. Hey, as everybody's coming in, I've got a question of the day in your chat box, and make sure that when you're looking at the chat box, it says reply to all, not just to us. And the question is, what was the last act of kindness at work that you received? The last act of kindness at work that you received. Put it in the chat box. We'd love to see. If we call this work, we have received no kindness from each other, but maybe from other people.
That's a good question. I'm trying to think when my last one was.
Well, I'll share one as people are typing theirs in. Oh, Carol, her retirement send off. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
that's great.
Nice.
Yeah. No, I had a travel nightmare on Monday, and I had to call Delta to have them wake me up out of it. And the first first agent that I talked to was not kind, and she just did the very minimum. And then I decided to play call center roulette, and I thanked her kindly. Gave her a very low rating on the survey, and then I called someone else, and that person said, "Oh, I'm so sorry this happened. Let us see what we can do. I love a challenge." And
And Richard, you are a challenge.
Yes.
I know, yeah.
And
she
Richard,
went to great lengths.
I hate to tell you,
all
but
to
most
no
people
avail.
don't take that survey afterwards. So that's an act of kindness on your part.
Yeah, yeah.
So
By the
listen,
way,
everybody that's
fact-
coming in, if
The
you
fact
didn't
that
hear,
Richard is a 3 million mile flyer, and I'm not exaggerating, on
Yes.
Delta usually helps for kindness on there.
exactly.
Well, you would have thought so with that first one, but it didn't. Anyway, who
Hey.
else has got a receiving kindness story? Stephen.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping a colleague fix a problem in managing a student issue. Excellent.
For the people just joining us, it's the question is, tell us about the last time you received an act of kindness at work. And I think we'll get started, guys. What do you
Yeah,
think?
let's do it.
Michael Kerr,
Hi.
why don't you go first?
I will go first. It is March 18th, 2026. My name is Michael Kirk, coming to you in the Canadian. Excuse me. There's a good start.
He's a
You got a Heimlich?
I'm so excited.
You got somebody there to do the Heimlich if you need it?
Yeah. I'll self Heimlich. Coming to you from Canmore, Alberta, in the Canadian Rockies, I speak on workplace culture and humor in the workplace. My last book is Small Moments, Big Outcomes. And today is, because I know you want to know the theme days, it's the 18th. It is official Sloppy Joe Day, Kiss Your Fiance Day, Transit Driver Appreciation Day, Global Recycling Day, and my favorite, and we're going to have some of these, I'm sure, in the next 45 minutes, Awkward Moments Day. To celebrate those awkward moments. Sanjay, why don't you take off?
Speaking of awkward,
Sanjay.
Sorry, I was celebrating Awkward Moment Day there. My name is Sanjay Nath. I am based in Oakville, just outside of Toronto in Canada. I am a speaker and author focusing on performance and leadership. And as always, I'm excited to be here on every other Wednesday. Thank you for attending. I will throw it over to Mr. Haddon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nath. I'm Richard Haddon, and I'm an author and speaker. I wrote Contented Cows Still Give Better Milk, and I speak about employee engagement, leadership, retention, and those kinds of things. I'm coming to you today from beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, where the pollen count is higher than the gas prices. And so we're delighted to see everybody here. I love Carol's question, can I kiss someone else's fiance? Yes. And Rob was gifted some Girl Scout cookies. Rob, you have my address, is all I can say.
Rich is on the ball today, guys. For Michael and Sanjay, who came in a little late, I don't want to tell everybody that, but you did. Before that, Linda had asked if Richard was a Canadian, and Richard thought she said a comedian. And went on to explain that we're all comedians. So
there's a fine line between being a Canadian and a comedian.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but I will say Richard is on the ball.
Make a great list of Canadian comedians.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
said four guys walked into a podcast.
That's right.
Yeah.
Ba-dum-bum. I'm Jeff Tobe, everybody. I am a professional speaker, trainer, and author. Author of my latest book is a business parable called The Lemonade Stand, customer experience lessons from a 9-year-old entrepreneur. And it's my pleasure to introduce our guest today. I am so excited that Linda's here. Linda Cohen is also an international speaker, consultant, author. Um, and she believes that kindness isn't just a feel-good idea. And I'm really excited to hear more about that. It's a powerful strategy for leadership, culture, and connection. That's why we had to have her on the show. She is known as the kindness catalyst and has written 2 books on the topic of kindness, including The Economy of Kindness, I have it written here, How Kindness Transforms Your Bottom Line. Linda shares the ROI of kindness with audiences across multiple industries around the world. Her programs are deeply rooted in helping people build better workplaces just through small, consistent acts of kindness. Whether she's guiding a leadership cohort or speaking to 1,000 people or 1,000 middle schoolers, I would like to hear about that as well. Or consulting with the CEO, Linda helps people see that kindness isn't a weakness. It's what makes strong teams, meaningful work, and lasting impact. She's originally from New England. We were just talking about this. Linda and her husband Aaron have called Oregon home for 30 years. By the way, Linda, Canadians call it Oregon, so we'll have to talk
That's
about that
wrong.
too. They've raised 2 young, spirited adult children and 3 Cavalier King Charles Spaniards. When she's not working, you'll find her enjoying 2 newly rediscovered joys from her youth, making art and roller skating. No, not usually at the same time. I knew Sanjay was going to say something. And if you want to win her over, just hand her a perfectly brewed cup of Earl Grey tea. Here is your tea, Linda. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be with all of you and active chat. I'm already loving what you're sharing about receiving kindness in the workplace. So,
Yeah, thank you. And we're so excited to have you. And I'm going to kick things off just by asking, when you talk about being a kindness catalyst, I think is the word you use.
yep,
How do you define kindness in a cultural norm? Not just individual behavior like we think about it.
for sure. I see kindness as the actions that you might take when you see opportunities, whether that's in a workplace, in your personal life, somebody's going through something, and really just stepping in and doing an action, kind of in movement forward, possibly in something you would want to. I mean, you were joking about getting someone to buy your coffee in line, at a Starbucks or whatever, wherever you get your coffee. How many of you have had that happen to you? I actually have, I think, never had that happen to me, but I've heard stories about it. But if somebody has lost a relative, I will pull out a card and write them something. And so I know we're going to talk about this in the work setting, but I also teach leaders how to do that by seeing the employee as a whole person and not
Yeah,
just
but
someone
I
who's
guess
leading.
I guess I'm asking, what's the ROI? What's WIIFM? What's in it for me as a leader of an organization?
Well, do you want me to tell you the science and data of it? Like
A
personally,
little bit,
you
sure.
will
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
so the science
Numbers.
comes out of,
Sanjay especially wants to hear the
okay,
science.
Give me the
okay,
numbers.
Sanjay.
Give me the
So you're
numbers.
my skeptic who doesn't believe kindness is going to have an ROI, maybe, or
No,
somebody
no,
here.
no. I'm not a skeptic. I just like numbers.
Okay,
He's
so
a nerd. He's a
Intuitively,
nerd,
just-
not a skeptic.
So Sonia Lubomirsky, she's a psychology professor at UC Riverside. She studied happiness.
Wait a minute. What is her name?
It's Sonia Lubomirsky.
Okay.
I can spell it for you. You guys can Google it. She has a new book out, actually. This is her first or second book that I'm quoting. She looked at what makes people happier. The research shows that 50% is your DNA, 10% is your living circumstances or work environment, and 40% is your intentional actions. So kindness done in a work setting for a leader actually has repercussions for you personally, that you might feel happier. That's one thing. And I connected to the bottom line because, if your employees feel happier and feel seen, I know many of you all talk about this. I looked at your bios before it got on. I mean, we're talking about people feeling seen, valued, recognized. Those are acts of kindness. Those are ways we can do that from a leadership perspective to our employees. So I guess that's the quick answer, Jeff.
Excellent.
I have a question around, because kindness is such an ambiguous term, and it's all, a lot has to do with how it's perceived more so than what you do, right? Because I think of it this way, like if my kid does something horrible,
Yeah.
And I let them be, and I don't reprimand them, and I don't use this as a teaching lesson,
Yeah.
am I being kind?
No.
On the flip side, if I ground them for 600 years,
Right.
is
No.
that being kind? And
Right.
so it's a perspective. So I guess my question is, how do you draw the line, or where do you find that balance, or especially in a work setting? Because giving feedback, some people may say it's a kind thing, and other people may say, you're the devil. So talk to us about that.
Okay, so I broke down kindness when I work with leaders as characteristics of kindness, 11 characteristics. They are, do I have compassion? Do I have empathy, understanding? Am I, resilient? Am I able to forgive? Am I able to have kind communication? Look, in a work setting, you may have to talk to that employee about their work style. Now, if you do it out of a nasty tone, you might not get what you want. You might give them the feedback, but it's not necessarily going to bode well. If you give that employee some feedback that could be hard for them to hear now, but something that could benefit them later on and help them, and you're seeing it, in a positive way, then later on they may know what they've benefited from. I have an example. I'll give you an example. I worked with a senior living community, 80 communities around the United States. I do a lot of work in senior living. I had a general manager come to me after we'd been doing a kindness initiative in her organization for a couple of years. She said, I had a chef come to me. He had not showed up for 2 months to do the resident special dinner. And I called him into my office because I knew I was going to take him off that meal. I was going to replace him with, another person helping him. And his body language told her in the moment that what she was doing was reprimanding him, and that was not feeling good for him. And so she said, I can tell from your body language that you're not happy with these consequences. What can we do together? What would be better? What would have made these last couple of months when you did this special dinner better? And they talked it through. And so they figured out it was the ordering piece, or it was the whatever piece. And so together they came to an answer. So, I think a leader, when they come to a situation that is challenging with compassion, it's potentially gonna bode well or better. So I don't know if that answers your question, Sanjay, or you.
Totally.
Well, one thing that
Sanjay's
I think
question-
about is in those situations, I think when we respond out of anger, it makes it very difficult to be kind. But if we respond truly, we may have the anger, but if we respond truly with the idea that I want to do this in the best interest of this other person, then it comes out as kindness. I think there's also some situations that are, we might say, kindness agnostic. I mean, kindness doesn't really apply.
Yeah.
You're neither kind nor unkind. You just
Sure.
are whatever. But I think in those opportunities,
Sure.
and so one question that go ahead, Michael. I can see you're champing at the
Yeah.
bit.
So no, sorry. Well, the kindness agnostic thing made me think about this idea of maybe you're getting at the aspect of just being neutral in a situation. But I would suggest in a lot of situations, if we're neutral, that is probably perceived by some people as being unkind, even though we didn't mean to be unkind. What I wanted to jump on earlier was Sanjay's question, and I'd be curious on your thoughts on this, Linda. It brings to mind this idea of there being a difference between being nice and being kind.
Sure.
And how there can be a danger of being overly nice as a leader. So if you're overly nice, then sometimes we worry about not ruffling feathers. We don't want to give that employee feedback because we want to be nice.
So here's the
whereas
thing.
it's a kind thing to give them feedback.
I
It's
feel
kind
like
to
nice can
everybody.
sometimes be passive aggressive. It
Mhm.
can be like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to be nice about this whole situation. But like, I keep thinking about when I was a young employee and I didn't necessarily know the ropes. If I had a mentor or a leader or somebody who had come to me and helped me say, you know, these are some ways you're going to get along better in the world. And I actually do. I did an internship in grad school, and I actually remember my leader being a little bit like this. Here are some ways that are going to serve you better as you live your life. Well, it probably didn't feel good in the moment to get that advice, but I think with that ability later on to look back, it was like, yeah, that helped me. You know, that helped me. So I think the nice is sometimes we have to have the crucial conversations, the hard conversations. Sometimes we have to fire people as managers. I mean, of course, there are things that happen all the time. We're human beings living a human life. But if you're thinking about it compassionately and with kindness, kindness is, you know, okay, so curiosity was my word of the year last year, because I feel like sometimes we can get curious. And I know right now, just, you know, where we are as a world, we're not curious enough. We're not getting curious about the people we don't think the same way we do. So I keep thinking if we can get a little curious, walk in their shoes, see it from their point of view, that can help us be kinder when we have.
Yeah. It seems like that would help it become easier for a person to be kind if they're
Yes.
actively doing that. I'm noticing Rob's comment, which is, I think, really absolutely true. Just as rising tide lifts all boats, kindness in the workplace makes a far more enjoyable, productive space. So it's not just the person that you might have been kind to.
Totally.
I think it probably makes it better for everyone.
You're not
I-
you're,
I wanna-
you're
Go
not
ahead.
wait, you're not going to read Carol's essay, are you?
Oh, did she write an essay? I love reading. And well, Celia, who was our guest host last time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Celia. Good to see you. Oh, maybe is it Celia who wrote this? No, it's Carol. Celia just says the kindest you can be to someone at work is to be honest with them, kindly, compassionately, but honest.
Well, and I'm
As
also,
opposed to brutally and retributionally. Is that a word?
So
It
see,
is
that
now.
to me is the Simon Cowell effect. Because if you ask Simon
Yeah.
Cowell,
Yeah.
he'll say that he's being kind because he's not beating around the bush. He's being, regardless of which side of the fence you're on, there's an interpretation to this. Anytime you get into these gray areas, it's something you really need to be aware of. And it's a concept we've talked about many times is one of the most important ways to be kind. Well, not specifically about kindness, but one of the best ways to communicate with people is to speak in their currency. I mean, the four of us.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm going to be serious for a second. The four of us have a very brotherly relationship.
Yeah.
And in fact, if I'm speaking in my values, if we aren't poking at each other, making fun of each other, to me, that is an ultimate sign of respect. I won't make fun of anyone. If I don't know the person, whatever, but I can bug these guys and they can razz me because, again, that is actually a form of kindness that we understand. But saying the exact same sentence that I say to Jeff to someone else, they might take it as an insult.
well, that's a trust. You have trust and respect in
Right,
this
yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
And I think that's the other piece, you
Yeah.
know. And
So
just going back to the rising tide comment, you know, when an organization decides that kindness is a value that they want to bring into the organization, there may be people who exit because they don't really fit into that model, or there may be people who have to be let go because, you know, they're trying, but their kindness isn't really prevalent, and the way they're managing other people just doesn't come out that way. And that's happened with, you know, leaders I've worked with. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's really, we want to set the precedent that this is really important to our culture. And this is what we want to have as the lens we look through. I call it, you know, looking through the lens of kindness.
And Linda, is there one cultural behavior that leaders overlook that you know, quietly erodes retention, keeping those people?
Oh, that is a good question.
From your perspective, yeah.
Let her off the hook. It doesn't have to be one. Give us some.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, I'll tell you what, when, you know, when we went pandemic and we went virtual, so all my work was now online, I started asking people, how could we be kinder to you? Because I didn't know, you know, here I am, I'm a speaker, I'm working at my own home office, but they're all a lot of frontline workers. And I thought it was going to be more pay and more, you know, more time off. And what I heard, like across any industry I was speaking to, smile at me, give me appreciation, thank me for the work I'm doing, a lot of these frontline workers, and then, you know, just say thank you. So none of that costs money. And I think
Yeah.
all of that helps you feel like, oh, wow, I'm part of something, even in a hard time, even in a challenging season of my work-life balance. I know my leaders have my back.
Linda, you raise a really interesting point there. I think it would be a worthwhile conversation to have in teams, is to actually talk about, hey, what is your definition of kindness, and what is kind to you? Because I suspect there's lots of examples out there where we think we're being kind as leaders or coworkers, and we're actually not being kind to that particular person. And going back to Sanjay's comment, we're not speaking the currency of their kindness, of their language, and it could be backfiring if we don't understand how people view kindness and how they want to be treated.
Yeah.
Well, and Carol gives us a good, you joked about the length of Carol's comment, which is because it's full of lots of good input. But she talking about a good customer service situation where the person on the other end went out of their way. They thought out, the cliche, thought outside the box. They were creative to do that. And I suspect that they did that because am I wrong, Linda? You tell me this person did something extra for Carol as the customer that she didn't need to do. Can I suspect she might have done that simply out of compassion and kindness, not because she wanted to get a better rating?
For sure.
If
you are setting up a team where so I do a lot of work in credit unions. Credit union professionals are super, like, it's in their DNA to be kind. They try to go the extra mile because there are people helping people culture. That's what they call it. And I feel like it isn't necessarily that person wants to get a better rating. They just are allowed to help support their customers, and so that person, I think you'll see it if you start looking for it. And by the way, the reason I asked about receiving kindness, why we started the whole time today, is because I have noticed in my work, since 10 years of being a speaker about kindness, people find it easy to be the giver of kindness, but people struggle when it comes to receiving kindness. Universally, it's an audience. Everybody will raise their hand. Sure, I can give kindness, but how do I receive? Because we're not taught that. So one of the things I think as leaders is sort of to normalize the receiving of kindness and to allow that to be okay. And so when you get a good experience like this, and I think you said this, Richard, at the beginning, you got kind of a bad experience with the airlines, and you wrote a little thing. I hope you wrote a good thing when you got that good experience.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
No, with the bad one, and it wasn't writing. It was just simply giving a 1 to 5. I gave her a 1 because that was the truth. When I got to the other one, I wanted to give her a 10, but 5 was the highest available.
Right. But also, if you're at a restaurant or you're at a grocery store, you get good, at a hotel, you get great service. I teach people, like, call the manager over and tell them what you got in terms of good experience. And then I want to know, does that manager go back and tell the employee what's the process? Like, I want that to come full circle, because if that doesn't happen, then why do we bother giving feedback? So that feedback actually could be a loop that helps the leaders get better,
Well, I'm curious, Linda, how did you decide to, each of us has our own kind of specialty that we speak about and write about. Why kindness for you? What made kindness stick out? There's a lot of different things, kindness being one of them, that are very valid to focus on. What made you go to kindness?
Kindness chose me. My dad and I had a difficult relationship. He lived in Vermont. I was living out here in Portland, had already been out here. He got diagnosed with lung cancer and was told he had less than a year. And we did some healing in that last year before he passed away. And I was 38. He had just turned 70. So I feel like we were kind of young in the journey of losing a parent. And after he passed away, I took on a project to do 1,000 mitzvahs, which is the Jewish word for a good deed, an act of kindness. I did 1,000 mitzvahs in his memory. So that project took 2.5 years and was the impetus for my first TED Talk and my first book and a blog I kept. And so I really feel like my father has played into he did used to tell me as a child and as a teenager, I had verbal diarrhea, which I just joke that if you had just told me, Dad, that I could have been a professional speaker and get paid for my verbal diarrhea, that would have really cut some time off the timeline. But I really feel like he's played a hand in this kindness work.
Wow.
That's
And-
That's
wonderful.
beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Very beautiful.
So
I wish kindness would find Michael as well, but whatever.
yeah.
We can touch
I'm
him with
fast.
kindness right now.
Right?
By the way, lots of people just got an aha going, oh, bar mitzvah. I get it. So-
Armin,
Yeah,
yeah, 13-year-old boy. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I have a
a
question, and again, thinking in the workplace context here, I think to the vast majority, I'm sure to 100% of people on this call, to the vast majority of humans, this is just kind of a no-brainer, right?
Yep.
Like, forget the ROI, it's just the right thing to do. It's the right bloody thing to do. Like, why are we not kinder in everything we do as we go through our days in all the small moments? So what prevents people, especially leaders, from being kind? What gets in the way of that?
I think the 3 top things are overwhelm, stress,
okay.
and that we're focusing on the productivity and the financial goals rather than our humans. We're doing profits before people. I think those are the 3 things.
Is that
And I'm like
sustainable?
you, Michael, I don't think I haven't thought, oh my gosh, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
How am I going to build a business on kindness? Like, why would people, I mean, and I had people in our speaker world also ask me that 12 years ago. So, but I do think it's important for us to talk about it. Look, when I bring up the idea of kindness in the workplace, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I think I'm showing you in some nuanced ways why it makes a difference and how your employees will react to it if you're the leader. And, you know, I've had leaders come back to me they've changed how they lead because of this awareness of why kindness matters in their workplaces and the kind of results they're going to get from their employees if they are softening their approach.
Can you give us some examples? Like, what are some of the things that you've seen that are, and I know I've said this for years, all professional speakers, we're all professional re-reminderers. We tell people stuff they already know, but can you package it in a way that people go, aha, and then they act on it? That's the ultimate goal. So give us some examples of some of those small, nuancy things that you've seen kindness that have helped organizations.
You know, recognition is, you know, one of my big topics. I love to talk about how we can recognize. Are you starting meetings with recognition? Are you waiting till their annual review? Are you doing things during the year that surprise and delights your team? You know, are you finding ways that you can acknowledge specifically what they have done that matters? Because I've heard that specificity from, you know, from a leader to an employee makes such a big difference when they hear what it was I did. So recognition is huge. I love spending time on recognition. I've actually added in the last 6 years a lot about kindness to self, because I think that as leaders, we don't realize, you know, we think that self-care is going to a bubble bath and getting a massage and whatever. And I think
it is that, but
it is that. And I think it's more than that. I think it's also, you know, creating healthy boundaries in your work life, which does not exist in our work world. And so how do I recognize if I'm having some mental health issues, if I'm having childcare issues, how can I normalize those so that I can be a role model as a leader, that this is actually okay, that we do have to have time to take time off. I actually, honestly, Sanjay, I want to help people talk more about rest, because I took a sabbatical in December and I was terrified that I should not do that as a speaker, as a solopreneur. And I had hit a season where I needed to take time off. And so I took a sabbatical for December, and I came out of that thinking, we have to talk about rest more. We don't talk about that. And, you know, I think most people, I won't put myself in the category, but I think most people are not getting enough rest.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I'm a huge believer of that. Sleep to me is more important, because if you think about it, you can actually go longer without food and water than you can without sleep.
Totally. Yeah.
Right. So you need to sleep, and people get crappy sleep, whether it's physically, they have a bad mattress, or they're stressed, or they have too much caffeine, or whatever it is. But yeah, like, I'm actually the oldest one on this call, but I just sleep the most, which is why I have fairest skin.
This is actually the longest Sanjay has stayed awake on one of our calls. I'm very impressed. I love that concept of self-kindness, and what it brings to mind is this idea that we all need to do this, and I know this is something I have to work on, is to give ourselves more grace and patience, right? And it seems to me, if we start giving ourselves more grace and patience when things go off the rails, when we feel like we're not enough or doing enough, then that is going to extend to us giving more grace and patience to the people around us.
100% it will. Yeah.
So we have a question from Rob, and that is, do you think that kindness is often viewed as a weakness and leaders are keen to impress upon staff that they're in charge?
Always, yes. I mean, that has been, if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me that since I started talking about kindness, I believe it. I think this was an old paradigm that kindness was a weakness. I do think that as we move into this, next era, I'll tell you, there were no speakers about kindness. There were very few speakers about kindness when I started, and now there are communities of us who really want this idea of kindness. And I think we are starting to see, I don't want leaders who lead like that with an iron fist. That's not working. We're clearly in a place where that does not serve humanity.
Right.
So how can we flip that on its head? How can we think about, what if I am compassionate and empathetic and I get my team to trust me? Oh, wow, maybe they'll do, they'll be on board with me. I've had people say, I feel like this is a family. I'm never going to take another job. Like, isn't that the best culture you could possibly create? Not the culture where people hate it and they quit. I mean, that's not going to serve your organization and the bottom line. So,
well, let's look at it from a different perspective. If I'm a candidate for a job, how do I assess that this is a culture of kindness? Is there anything we should tell people to look for?
This goes back to, like, I remember in my graduate school days, and he told us, if somebody's on the phone when you're doing your interview or doesn't really have time for you, isn't making good eye contact with you, that might be a red flag to you that manager is just not going to give you any ability to, to be present. So I guess I actually created situational behavioral onboarding questions for my teams to help them hire people with kindness. Because in a lot of my organizations, if you're considering, there are soft skills that I cannot teach people necessarily, like kindness, but I can teach them maybe some of the harder skills. So, but on the end of being an employee looking at it, I think, and this goes back to also just waking up your own, your gut. And I do teach about that when I talk to emerging leaders, trusting your gut, your own feeling, your intuition when you go to a place. How does it feel to you as a potential employee? Yeah. Unfortunately, though, Jeff, I think people feel like we're living in a world of such scarcity that it's like, oh my gosh, AI is going to boot me out. I'm not even going to get looked at for that interview. And then I've got to, and I feel like instead of trusting that the right person will show up, the right leader for you, the right match, the right situation. So.
Thank you.
Along the lines of self-care, I'm just going to back up for a second.
Yeah.
One of the things that I heard probably when I was in high school, and it always stuck with me, the idea of, from a self-care perspective, one of the best things you can do is keep promises to yourself. So, for example, if you say, I'm going to take a sabbatical in December, you don't come to December and kind of go, well, maybe I'll do it in January. And it's just that repeated idea of, if I say I'm going to go to bed at 10, go to bed at 10. If I'm going to pig out and enjoy and, like, whatever you say, keep that promise. And I find from a mental health standpoint, it's a very healthy habit to have.
I totally love that. I love that. And yeah, that's you being kind to yourself and making sure you value what you've said you will do for yourself. So somebody wrote, and Odie, maybe I don't have my glasses on. It's somebody wrote that the younger generation is better at doing these boundary things. These kind of
that's Celia.
Sorry,
the current generation better at that than boomers are. Yeah,
it's total, and I'm finding that for sure. And boomers are like upset that the younger generation wants to have a work-life balance, and they don't really want to put in the 80-hour work week. How could that possibly be?
Imagine that.
Hello, they also might have got kids who are in that age range. They don't think they're going to be able to buy a house or have the lifestyle that they were brought up in either, because of where we are. So
even if they do work 80 hours a week.
Exactly. So they're not going to do it. They're going to have a work-life balance.
Yeah.
We were at South earlier. They can't even afford a tank of gas.
Yeah.
I know.
And look at the comment from Anna saying that MIT recently published a study about the billions lost in failed AI pilot programs, and one of the key causes was lack of connection between leaders and employees. So she says, although it's not kindness specifically, it is about connection. And I think kindness is one of the strongest kinds of connection. And AI is very smart, but I'm not sure AI is capable of being kind.
And it won't replace humanity or belonging or connection. No. We're in a loneliness epidemic, and people talk about that all the time because what we all want really is to have people who see us feel like we belong to something, whatever that is, and and probably even do something every day that makes us feel like we've done something valuable and meaningful. So when leaders think about kindness, and I think I don't know which one of you asked this, but I think I have had to over the years break down kindness, that word that does have a weak, soft feel, to like, what does it actually mean? Trust, respect, forgiveness, all of those things that we can bring to the workplace, and probably overlaps with a lot of the work you all do around culture for sure. I just had to name it and also make it a corporate value, because it will impact your, financial bottom line if you don't have this as a concept.
Yeah.
Well, and
Richard and I
Rob,
have worked with an organization that kindness is part of their values, their written values,
Yeah.
culture
well,
of
and
kindness.
that's what they teach their clients as well.
Exactly.
Operating through
So
kindness.
let me ask you, again, I'm going back to hardcore,
Yeah.
numbers and things like that, but how do you measure kindness? Is there a way to do that?
Well, you can start by seeing if you have a revolving door and your people are coming and going, and suddenly you bring in a kindness initiative, and you can bring that to the place where, oh, people are staying now. Or the surveys from your clients, or in senior living for sure, residents, they like it more. You've paid attention to the dining services. You've spent time, dealing with the things that people tend to be unhappy about. And if you're spending time on that, that will impact your bottom line.
Yeah.
So depending on who I'm speaking to, I always make it relevant to retention, recruitment, reputation. In the beginning of doing my economy of kindness workshops, I would ask, like, what place do you love going to? Tell me a place you love as a customer going to. And it was crazy to me. I live out in the Pacific Northwest. I have a little auto body shop right near my house. So I had never gone to a place called Les Schwab. Les Schwab is a tire store.
Oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
all over the West Coast.
yeah.
And I had never heard of Les Schwab, who in the 80s created this company really filled with kindness, and also a financial way to put these little tire shops in little towns all over the Pacific Northwest, where he could have managers making a good living on a tire business. But everybody loved going there because the customer service was exceptional. So it was crazy to me that I'd never stepped into a Les Schwab. And I think that's the thing, when you treat your employees, like if we treated our employees like they were the customers, well, guess what's going to happen? It's going
Yeah.
to to
I
your
especially think about that in the senior care situation. If you're kind to your employees, they're more likely, not necessarily guaranteed, but more likely to be kind to the residents. And of course, that's what you need. Looking also at Rob's comment about one of the best tips he ever received in interviewing was to check with the staff who greeted the candidate to see how they were with them. That's brilliant.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you say the same thing. How does people treat a service person? How does somebody treat
Yeah, yeah.
a
And I
waitress?
once talked with a guy who used to, when he was considering people for promotions into leadership in his organization, he would go on trips with them. He would travel with them
Yeah.
to see how that person treated the flight attendants and servers and people in the hotels. And that often made the difference between two good, good candidates. But if one was kinder than the other, that's the one who was probably going to get the promotion.
Do you all know about Herb Kelleher, Southwest
Yeah,
Airlines?
yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that story and how
And yet, on the surface, if I didn't know him, but I was around when he was alive, and you would see him. He was, cigar, smoking with with tattoos on it. He was a rough guy. He didn't come across as kindler and gentler, which is interesting because if we think about the first President Bush used that phrase, a kinder, gentler America, and it was almost ridiculed for, again, being soft. Herb Kelleher was not that way, but yeah, he was legendary for his kindness.
Right. And people loved him. And I remember, reading about how they had to give him extra time when he would land in airports because he wanted to talk to you. How's your kid? How was the game? All the things he knew about people,
He used to ask, how are the hot pants doing? Southwest Airlines, that was their first uniform where it's
they were wearing hot pants? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
They've had to change that, yes.
But he talked about those. He talked a lot about humor. He talked about kindness. He talked about love in the workplace in a business context, right? He was kind of a pioneer for somebody that high up. I was thinking your example. I've seen that too, Richard, of people taking candidates purposely out for a meal to see how they treat the service staff. I love Beryl Health call centers. they were telling me, the HR person there, whose job title was the Queen of Fun and Laughter, as an aside, she was telling me that their guidepost is they look for how a person treats wait staff, children, and dogs. And that's a pretty good indicator of
Yeah.
this
So
is
they
the
take them
person
to
we
the
want to
Humane
spend our
Society when they
workday with.
interview them for lunch, the Humane Society, and
Yes. They'd bring in a
Listen,
dog, they'd bring in a couple of cute
and the
dogs
daycare.
taste great. Okay, so I treat them well. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
Sanjay.
So
Sanjay, we're gonna
kind
get
of,
letters now.
yeah, exactly. We are kind of wrapping up. What's one behavior, Linda, that you would have leaders stop immediately? If they want to build a more kind culture.
I would
Something to stop
Or-
as opposed to something to start.
Yeah, I
Interesting. Okay.
I would tell leaders to stop assuming they know everything. I would tell
love
them
that.
to make sure the right people are in the room if they're making decisions that are going to impact their teams, and make sure they've taken a temperature of how that's going to land. And
Yeah.
also maybe get curious about, I think there's a lot of leadership who doesn't necessarily have the same lived experience of what the things they're bringing out, the changes or whatever, could impact their employees. And obviously not every decision can be that way, but if they're,
No.
are going to impact your team.
Right.
Have voice.
And I think another big thing on this whole kindness piece is sometimes people roll their eyes and go, it costs money up front, it costs time, it's utilizing resources. And I can just yell at the employee and get them to do what they want. And this is true short term, but from a sustainability standpoint,
Right.
and if you look at, like you said, lower turnover, and then what does that mean? It means less training costs. And so there's a very strong economic reason to do it. But you also have to have a long-term vision. You can't look at it from between now and next week. It's got to be longer than that. That's why people, again, you said it earlier, they don't have to go to work, they get to go to work.
Right.
People will always reserve their best effort for a leader who cares about them.
Totally. I mean, I'm sure
you get, without any more financial investment in that employee, you get a greater return.
Totally.
Yeah. And it's not always additive, right? It's not always about necessarily doing more things. It's as much about just
doing
thinking
things
about
in a
how
different
you're
way.
doing the things you're already doing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you said I'm not teaching anything that's rocket science, for sure. I'm not teaching I'm what did you say, Sanjay? It was like you're
a professional
reminder. Yeah. I mean, look, kindness is not something we don't all know the word. We don't know what it is, but how do I actually do that in my workplace and help create a culture where people love to come to work? They feel like it's part of a family. So, and the leader.
I think not being kind is more of an act of omission than anything else. People just simply omit being kind or fail to be kind. They know how to, they could choose to. They
Or
just
they're
don't
overwhelmed,
choose
stressed,
to.
and exhausted.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're being
As you
pulled
said.
so far that they can't really put that at the top of their agenda.
Yeah.
It's
It
about
doesn't occur
being
to them.
intentional, right? Just slowing down and being intentional.
Totally.
It doesn't
don't call them
occur to
random
them
acts of kindness.
yeah.
Call them intentional acts of kindness. Then you choose bad.
Totally.
Yeah. And they don't
I see
have
that
to
Stephen has put a link to Linda's book from Amazon in the chat.
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen.
So,
I really appreciate that.
Good.
But please buy hundreds for for everybody you know.
In case you want to read it 100 times. 100
Yeah.
That book was actually so much easier to write. The first book was my 1,000 Mitzvahs book, and that was hard to write as a first-time author. And so I dragged my feet. It took 10 years, and finally I had my second book came out 10 years later.
So I have one more question.
Yeah.
What role does peer, I don't want to call it pressure, peer behavior play versus, we've been talking the entire time about leadership and kindness coming from the top down. How do you promote kindness in your teams with your peers?
That's so great. I actually have a quadrant when I do speak to organizations, with the manager to the team member. These are the different 4 quadrants in an organization: manager to team member, team members to each other, team members to the client, and clients back to the team member. And all of those quadrants there are ways to elevate a culture of kindness. So when you're talking about peer to peer, And I heard so many amazing stories throughout the pandemic of a peer who would see that I was having a rough time, that I was having something happen outside of the workplace. They would be the first person to witness that something was going on for me. And if they showed up and supported me or helped share what I could use, like I'm thinking somebody passes away at home, they start a meal train, something like that. You don't
Yeah.
have to have a title in an organization
Right.
to be the kindness catalyst. And I have had incredible CNAs that I know who wear like love is kindness in action. She is like the epitome of kindness in that community. And people love the fact that she's conscious of when somebody is having a rough day, So you don't have to have a title to be that. And you can be this lovely, catalyst within an organization to help spread kindness. And
I love that. I love that. And that's a great
We are
place to,
quickly running out of time. We're getting
Yep.
some great comments here at the end.
Yeah.
We just also had an act of kindness from Sherry, who shared the Canadian link for
Okay.
Linda's book.
Oh,
And
thank
that's
you.
simply just a way of thinking about that. So
Thank
great.
So I'm sorry we have to close this off. And as I say, when we have such an interesting guest that we could easily go for another hour, but
Yeah.
but we can't. We made a promise a long time ago that we'd get people out the door in 45 minutes. All right. By the way, this is no joke, guys. Our next EOW show is on April 1st, I believe. So get it? No,
No
no
fooling.
joke. April
No
1st.
fooling. We'll be
Yeah,
there.
no fooling, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but growing up, all of a sudden it became only the morning of April 1st. Did you have that?
By
Like,
noon, you're done by noon.
It was
By
supposed to
that's
be
a
over.
you don't have to
Canadian
act like a
thing. I
fool
think it's a
anymore.
Canadian thing. Anyway, our next show is April 1st. Please put it
Yes.
on your calendar. I want to thank Linda personally. Thank you so much. Linda and I have worked together in the past, and she's an amazing speaker and consultant. And thank you so much for sharing your insight today, Linda.
you.
And thank you to everybody who was on board with us today. We had some great comments. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Yeah. And when will we see them? Every other
Every
Wednesday.
other
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
We got to
Bye,
work.
No
everyone.
fooling.
Thank you,
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
then. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.